So this looks almost identical to the frame that we did last class. The only difference is today we're going to actually have implied information because our triangles are going to be glued together. So we're going to have to mark information before we go through steps 2 through 5. So if we look at example number 1, these angles, this triangle are actually glued together at an angle. But my question is, are these angles vertical? No, because they don't make that bow tie. Vertical angles, oh, let me not write and highlight. Vertical angles look like a bow tie. These do not look like a bow tie. So they're not vertical, so I can't mark those. What I do have is these arrows. And those arrows mean parallel. So we know that we have corresponding angles and alternate interior angles. These are not set up really to be writing Z's everywhere inside triangles, so I'm going to go ahead and use my corresponding angles. If I took this triangle and slid it or translated it over to this triangle, this angle would be on top of this angle. And because the lines are parallel, those are my corresponding angles. The other one that I would see is that this angle ends up on top of that angle. So now I'm going to get rid of my little slidey thing here. So now I want to cover up and get rid of one triangle completely because when they're glued together it ends up being a big mess. So I'm going to go ahead and cross through one because they are marked the same. I did number 1, check. I marked all the implied information. Do the triangles match number 2? They do. And now I'm going to label all the sides and angles. But I need to pick one triangle. I'm picking the one on the right. So help me out. What am I going to put right here? In the middle? This is an S. The arrows do not give me the S, but that little tick mark, which implies that it's congruent, does. And I have 3 X's. I always want 3 X's. I don't want any more. And how are these two triangles congruent? Or SAA. So now in example 2, what is my implied information? I always ask myself when I look at implied information, one of the first things I ask myself are how are those triangles glued together? They're stuck together at a point, so that implies that I might have vertical angles. Do I have vertical angles? Yes. So my vertical angles are congruent. And now that I know my vertical angles are congruent, are the pictures marked the same? Yeah. So I'm going to pick one triangle and go ahead and label. Help me out. What am I going to put here? So I have 3 X's. I'm good. Now how are these two triangles congruent? Or SAA, whichever way you want to write it. And don't forget, just because it has that 90-degree angle, most people want to see 90-degree angle and say HL. It's not HL. You know what I mean? Like you actually have to go through the A's and the S's and see if you get the right ass. So let's look at the next one. How are those two triangles glued together? In example 3. They're glued together right here at a side. I normally mark it with an S, so I know that's the reflexive property. So once they're glued together at a side, do the pictures match? This is actually a reflection. If I folded one on top of the other, it'd be all the markings would line up. I'm going to get rid of half this triangle. So what am I going to write up here? So what is this one? I can't go over 2 X's. So it would be ASS. When I get ASS, I have to ask myself, is there a 90-degree angle? So it's HL because it's the right ass. So let's look at the last example. How are those two triangles glued together? At an angle. So are they vertical angles? So I'm going to go ahead and mark my vertical angles. Now, do the pictures match? So let's go through and get rid of one. What am I going to put here? So how are these two triangles congruent? Oh, and I have another ask. Is there a 90-degree angle? No. So the answer is none. If there's no 90-degree angle, I can't cuss in geometry. Only if it's the right ass I can say it. Okay, any questions?